Welcome to the Behind Closed Doors channel. Wishing you a peaceful day. Today, I'd like to share the following story with you. I hope you enjoy listening to my story. Now, please. This morning, I vanished from my family's life. For the past 20 minutes, my phone has been vibrating without pause, wave after relentless wave, like the panicked heartbeat of someone standing at the edge of a cliff. First, my daughter called, then my son-in-law, then the landline at their house. At one point, all three rang over each other simultaneously, as though if I simply didn't pick up for a few more minutes, their entire world would collapse. I watched the screen light up, then go dark. Light up, then go dark again. Familiar names appearing, then disappearing. I knew perfectly well what was on the other side. The frantic urgency, the pressure, the dependence. Yet somehow, today, I no longer felt compelled to respond. I turned my phone face down on the table. Instead, I sat at leisure in a small cafe, 2 villages from home, where no one knows me and no one expects anything of me. The cafe was small and quiet, the warm scent of roasted coffee rising through the air. An old song played softly, just enough to fill the silence without disturbing one's thoughts. Before me was a simple breakfast, buttered bread and a hot café au lait. Steam curled upward, carrying that familiar, rich, creamy aroma, yet somehow strangely luxurious. Luxurious because in 7 years, I had never once had a morning like this. 7 years. 7 years of every morning beginning at 6:30. No alarm needed. My body rose automatically, like a machine that had been pre-programmed. I would go to the kitchen, boil water, prepare breakfast, check every school bag. 3 children, 3 personalities, 3 different sets of demands. The eldest won't eat wheat flour. The second must have pre-cut fruit. The youngest forgets notebooks, pens, would forget her own head if no one reminded her. I kept track of every detail without writing anything down. I knew which pair of sneakers was usually kicked under the bed. I knew which jacket would be left behind a door. I knew which child would start an argument first and which one would cry last. I was not simply their grandmother. I was the person who kept each family morning from falling apart. But today, the courtyard at their house stood empty. No children calling back and forth to each other. No thundering footsteps, no doors slamming. And I was not there either. A strange feeling crept through me. Not quite guilt, not quite relief, but emptiness. I'm 64 years old. At this age, people usually speak of retirement as a reward, a phase for rest, for travel, for finally living for oneself after a lifetime of sacrifice. But for me, and for so many women of my generation, retirement is not the end of responsibility. It is merely a change in its form. From a salaried job with set hours and days off, to unpaid work with no limits and no concept of enough. I became the model grandmother, always present, always ready, always dependable, and always invisible. I was the one who braved the rain to pick up the grandchildren, weaving through carelessly parked cars to keep them safe from harm. I was the one who sat for hours in the sweltering waiting room outside martial arts class, simply to make sure no child was left behind. I was the one who knew each child's deepest fears, the small, quiet things that even their own parents sometimes failed to notice. I was the foundation, but foundations are never seen. And then there was Ba Huang, the children's paternal grandmother, my daughter's mother-in-law. A figure who was, in every way, my opposite. If I was stability, she was disruption. If I was quiet, she was dazzling. She arrived like a gust of wind, bringing color, laughter, and gifts. Not ordinary gifts, but the kind that made people gasp. Yesterday, at little Lan's birthday party, I understood this more clearly than ever before. I had spent weeks preparing her gift. Each pencil, each sheet of paper, each careful stitch, all of it carried my devotion. Not expensive, not showy, but one of a kind, made entirely for her. And then, a white box appeared, a brand new iPad. In an instant, every pair of eyes turned toward it, and my gift lay quietly on the grass, unseen, forgotten, just like me. But what hurt me most was not the comparison. It was the words that came after. Careless words, honest words, words that were never meant for my ears, yet drove straight into my heart. "Grandma is so boring." Just one sentence, but it erased 7 years of my life. I stood there, in silence, waiting for someone to speak up for me. But no one did. Only quiet acknowledgement, gentle, natural, as though it were simply an obvious truth. And in that moment, I understood something. It was not that they were ungrateful. It was that they had grown used to having me, so used to it that they could no longer see the value of my presence. I left the house through the back door, without a word of goodbye, without a sound, just as I had existed for the past 7 years, quietly, unnoticed. Sitting in my car, in the dark, I thought for a long time about the trips I had postponed, about the aches and pains I had ignored, about myself. And for the first time, I asked, am I helping them, or am I erasing my own worth? This morning, I did not wake up at 6:30. I did not go to my daughter's house. I did nothing they expected of me. I chose to disappear, not as punishment, but as a reminder that I am not a default feature of their lives, that my presence is a choice, and if it is not treasured, I have every right to withdraw it. A message arrived. "Mom, where are you?" I stared at those words for a long time. Then I smiled, a faint smile. Not bitter, not angry, just calm. I knew that in the end, I would go back, because I love them. But when I return, I will no longer be the person I once was. I will no longer be the silent servant. I will be a grandmother in the truest sense, loving, but with boundaries, giving, but without losing myself. And if one day they truly come to understand, it will not be because I sacrificed more. It will be because I stopped at exactly the right moment. I did not reply to the message right away. I left my phone lying quietly on the table a little while longer, as though wishing to extend this rare moment. This moment in which I belonged to no one, was called to duty by no name, was bound by no habit. The cafe had grown slightly busier. A few young people walked in, chatting and laughing. A middle-aged couple sat near the window, sharing a baguette and the morning paper. Life went on, ordinarily enough to feel almost cruel. No one knew that just 2 villages away, a family was in disarray over the absence of one small, indispensable piece, a grandmother. I took another sip of coffee. The cup had cooled somewhat, but its flavor still lingered on my tongue. Bitter, but not unpleasant. Much like the feeling in my heart just then. The phone vibrated again. This time, not a message, but a call. My daughter's name, Hui, appeared on the screen. I watched it for a few seconds, then silenced it. Not because I wanted to worry her, but because I knew that if I answered now, I would soften. I would hear her rushed, panicked voice, and my body would automatically stand up, pay the bill, drive home, out of sheer reflex. And then, everything would go back to the way it was. No, today was not that day. I placed my hand over my chest and breathed in deeply. A strange sensation spread through me, like someone who has just learned to say no after a lifetime of only nodding. I opened a book I had bought 3 months ago. The pages still carried the fresh scent of new ink. The words were arranged in neat rows, waiting to be read, like a part of my life that had been deferred for far too long. I began to read. At first, my eyes moved across the words, but my mind drifted back to Hui's house. I imagined the children scrambling because they couldn't find their shoes. I imagined Hui getting dressed while making calls while searching for her keys. I imagined my son-in-law frowning at the clock. Those images would have made me leap to my feet before, but today I merely observed them as a spectator would, without interfering, without rushing in to fix things, just watching. And strangely, after a few minutes, those images began to fade. The words before me grew clearer. I began to understand what I was reading. I was reading a book. Such a simple thing, something anyone could do. Yet for me, it felt like such a luxury. Nearly an hour later, the phone had stopped vibrating constantly. Only a few scattered messages remained. "Mom, are you all right? Mom, where are you? I'm sorry if I did something wrong yesterday." I paused at the last one. I read it again, slowly. "I'm sorry." Those two words made something in my heart stir quietly. Not because they were grand, but because they were rare. Hui is not a thoughtless person. I know that. She is simply swept up in the current of life. Work, money, pressure, children, all of it keeps her in a constant state of racing forward. And in that race, I became her default anchor. An anchor she never thought to check was still holding firm. Until today. I did not reply right away. I set the phone aside and closed my eyes. Old memories began to surface. An image of Hui as a small child, clinging to the hem of my shirt, sobbing because she didn't want to go to kindergarten. I had coaxed her gently, promising to wait outside the gate until she was let out. And I had stood there. In truth, in the sun, in the rain, I never broke a promise. I remembered the nights she ran a high fever. I stayed awake all night, wiping her down little by little, terrified she might have a seizure. I remembered her examination days. I cooked the dishes she loved, sat beside her, offering nothing but silence. I had once been her entire world. And then she grew up. She built her own family, her own world. And I stepped back. That was right. It was natural. But perhaps I had stepped back too far, far enough to disappear entirely. I opened my eyes. The morning light had shifted. The sun had climbed higher, slanting through the glass and brightening the corner of my table. I picked up my phone. My finger scrolled across the screen and paused on Hui's name. I pressed call. After only one ring, she picked up immediately. "Mom, where are you? I've been calling and calling." Her voice tumbled out in a rush, nearly breaking. I did not hurry to answer. I let her speak. "The kids were late for school. I had to ask the neighbor to take them. Then I was late for my meeting too. Mom, you had me so worried." I listened, in silence, waited until her voice slowed. "Mom, are you all right?" Only then did I speak. "I'm fine." A pause. "Then, where are you?" "Having coffee." "Pardon?" I could almost picture her bewildered expression. "You're having coffee?" "Yes," I answered simply. No explanation, no apology. On the other end, Hui was quiet for a few seconds. I knew she was trying to reorganize her thoughts. "But, Mom, why didn't you come over? Every other day you—" "Every other day I did," I said, cutting in gently. "But not today." Another pause, longer this time. "Mom, is something wrong?" That question had finally come. I leaned back in my chair and looked out the window. People still walked by, cars still passed. Life continued, uninterrupted. "Yes," I said. My voice was so calm it surprised even me. "Something is wrong." "What is it, Mum?" I did not answer immediately. I chose my words carefully, not to reproach, not to wound her, but to tell the truth. "I'm tired." Just 3 words, but on the other end of the line I heard a soft intake of breath. "Tired? How do you mean?" "Tired of always having to be there," I said slowly. "Tired of always having to manage everything. Tired of doing so much, yet feeling as though I don't exist." I paused, to let it settle, to let her feel it. "Mum, I never thought of it that way." "You didn't think of it," I agreed, though she couldn't see me nod. "Because you had grown used to it." There was no anger in my voice, only truth. A truth we had both always known, but had never spoken aloud. On the other end, Hui said nothing. I heard her breathe, slightly unsteady. "Mum," her voice dropped. "Is this about yesterday?" I closed my eyes. The image of little Lan hugging her iPad came back to me. Then those words. "Grandma is so boring." "Not only yesterday," I answered, "but yesterday was the first time I saw it clearly." "I'm sorry." This time she said it distinctly. Not a text message, not a hurried utterance, but a genuine apology. I did not respond straight away. I let her continue. "Mom, I didn't mean to. The kids didn't mean to. We just got used to it," I said for her. "Yes." Her voice fell small. I breathed out. "I'm not angry," I said. "I just don't want to go on like this any longer." "What do you mean?" "I mean that I am still the children's grandmother," I said, each word deliberate. "I still love them, but I will no longer do their parents' job for them." Silence. A long silence. I knew those words were not easy to hear. This was not a small change. It was an upheaval of an entire system they had come to rely on. "But Mom, we have work, and the kids." "That is your responsibility," I said, gently but firmly. "Not mine." I heard Hui draw a deep breath, perhaps holding something back. "So, you won't come anymore?" "It's not that I won't come," I said. "I will come. When I want to, when I miss the children, when I want to play with them." I paused. "But not when you need a babysitter." On the other end of the line, silence. A heavy silence, but a necessary one. I knew that from this moment forward, everything would be different. It would not be easy. There might be hurt feelings, there might be blame, but at the very least, it would be real. "Mom." At last, Hui spoke. Her voice had gone slightly hoarse. "I understand." I said nothing. "Give us a little time. All right, Mom?" I smiled, a quiet smile. "All right." And this time, I no longer felt as though I had disappeared. I was coming back. Not in my old role, but as myself. Thank you for watching the video. Please subscribe to the channel, like, comments, and share. See you again!